What is up, everybody? This is Joe Adams, and welcome to the Relentless Pursuit podcast. As always, we got my man Logan Hyder of Cinema 83 in the house doing his thing.
Hello.
This podcast brings people individuals from all different backgrounds on all different journeys. We tell stories of overcoming, things that they've been through, traumas, success, things they built, and all these different things come together within these stories, and we go on tangents and whatnot, but this is for people that want to listen to others, find relatable stuff, and, just gain a lot of value from these stories. So it's a beautiful thing. We're very grateful for it. And now I'm going to, and me doing this intro thing, by the way, is very new, but I'm trying to give like a disclaimer.
That one was better than yesterday's.
Yeah.
So you're getting better at it.
They were even impressed yesterday. And I was like, shit, that was on a whim. But I'm trying to give people disclaimers to know what the podcast is about. That being said, without further ado, I would like to introduce my man, Jeff Bergholtz.
Let's go.
Welcome.
I'm glad I'm here, and it's an honor to be here.
Grateful to have you, Jeff. Jeff was introduced to me by Nick. Nick Bennett.
Brett.
Nick Brett. I don't know why. I know a Nick Bennett.
Damn, Nick.
Nick, I'm sorry.
I can't remember your name.
He's like, damn, Joe, screw you.
I'm trying to get him to take my name on. He's got a couple different names.
Yeah, he does. I think that's why I could
just keep adding on to it.
I was like, do I call him Cunningham?
Yeah.
No, but Nick Britt. So Nick was on this podcast just a handful of episodes ago. Yeah. So, and I like to reach out to guests that I've had and be, hey, do you got anybody that you think would be a good guest on this show?
A lot of our best guests have come from guests.
And immediately he was like, I got somebody for you. And he sent me your information. That's and checked out your stuff. And I was like, this guy looks like a badass. So here you are, man. Welcome, Jeff.
Way to go, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. And it's crazy. Some of the best guests we've had have been suggestions from guests.
Yeah.
So we're grateful for it. But Jeff, tell us about yourself. Just briefly tell us what it is that you do. And then we're going to take it back. But currently, what you got going on in your life, and then we're going to rewind a little bit.
Yeah. Basically, I'm in the fitness business. I started in the fitness business in 1984, 85, when I was getting out of college. Was a former college football player, powerlifter, bodybuilder, and I had a great love for fitness. Back then, I didn't get paid for coaching and training people. It's when the old Nautilus clubs rolled out.
Yeah.
You're an instructor for $3.35 an hour, whatever minimum wage was. And I was trying to figure out my major. I was a PE major. They didn't have exercise science or phys back then, so my undergrad was in PE. But then when I went back to graduate school, I was able to focus on kinesiology and exercise phys. So here I am right now, 62. I've worked for several different gyms, racquetball clubs, started a couple things with doctors. I've probably opened 7 different clubs in the Southeast. 23 years ago, I rolled out on my own. I guess I was 38-ish and started Takes Two Fitness. Takes Two Fitness, basically we just, training was getting popular at that time. I think CrossFit became a real brand about 2001, about the time I opened.
Okay.
Which we just called that winter workouts in football. But anyway, so we started coaching people, and the preface was that people need a partner, 2 are better than 1, and we took a biblical verse and kind of camped out on it.
Nice.
And Ecclesiastes says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a greater return for their work.
Nice.
Pity the man that falls and has no one to help him up. So the preface there is that you and I are going to do better together than you're going to do by yourself.
Of course.
And so we camped out on that. My wife helped me start the business. And we're 23 years in. For 18 years, we had 3 locations in the city of Nashville. We were downtown in the heart of the city, and we were on Music Row with all the country people. And then my main location is in what they call the Midtown West End location, which is near Vanderbilt University. Nice. After COVID, we closed 2 just because this new model in society of work from home. Everybody's working from home, and so those buildings emptied out.
I hate it.
I don't even know how those landlords are making it, but we're still got the West End location. And I've got clients that have been with me 25 years,
nice.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
We've trained anything from entertainers to lots of famous songwriters being in Nashville, to housewives, moms, athletes. And what's interesting, somebody asked me today, said, how did you create a wellness center for mature adults? And I'm like, well, I didn't. We've just been there a long time, and I'm in my 60s. So
we weren't mature adults then.
And they,
Hey, Jim, will you pull up my...
Yeah, sorry, man.
You're good.
They were 25, 35, and now they're 55 and 60. And I even have clients in their upper 70s now. So we rent space to other independent coaches, and that's where I met Nick a couple years ago. From a good friend of mine, precious friend of mine. That's his wife has been with me 21, 22 years. Sean Hammond, you guys talked about that and prefaced him. Yeah. His black belt jiu-jitsu guy, and Carolyn is my lead trainer. Has been with me forever, and that's the hardest working and most loyal family you ever meet. And so I met Nick through them, met Tony Hill through them, and a lot of my good coaches through those guys. And so the business is twofold. We have our own training staff, and we coach people. We're in a Class A, high rise and, Midtown. So we have a lot of corporate execs. Had the privilege. I got away from training country artists. I used to send people on the road. We've trained with Florida Georgia Line, Thomas Rhett, and the list goes on and on and on. Sugarland, so I can sit there and name drop. I've become really close friends with lots of songwriters. In fact, one of my trainers, Ben Stennis, wrote, I think, the #1 song last year. Is it Cody Jenkins? I don't even listen to country anymore. Cody Johnson.
I don't know.
He's a songwriter now. So I'm a working owner. I just can't get off the floor. I love it too much. The lives that I touch, the influence that I have, seeing these folks that have changed forever. Their kids have changed.
Yeah.
I've watched second and third generation of people. Now their kids are growing up and in their 20s and doing fitness. And so, it's one of those things that, are we underpaid? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But the amount of satisfaction that comes from that on the weekend when I come home, like, wow, and my wife tells me all the time, look at all the people that are better because of you.
Yeah.
And that's very gratifying.
I mean, that's holy work right there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was talking about this with a client this morning, and I was like, people can sit there and pray and do all the regular actions, go to church or go to their spiritual place, and they can do that every Sunday. But unless they're putting in the work to actually make an impact, that's not doing it.
Right.
Like, what kind of example do you want to set? Are you living your life and doing things to honor your God or your gods or whatever it is? That's what you need to be doing. So doing what you do is setting that example. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, and
that's how you bring honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to tell people all the time, what is a coach? What is a trainer? It kind of carried a negative connotation years and years ago. Now it's a lot more prestigious because more and more people are doing fitness. More and more people are wanting to anti-age. They want to get younger next year. And so, for me, being a coach is I tell people all the time, you're a counselor, all right?
Yeah.
You're a coach and you're a general contractor because I'm building stuff all the time.
Of course.
I'm transitioning equipment. I mean, I load plates all day long, and I don't know, knock on wood, how I keep doing it, but it's gratifying because I see these people that are changing their lives.
Yeah.
And their kids' lives are changing. And I'm like, wow. And I'm getting paid for a hobby. It started out as a hobby, and I've ended up making my living for, almost 40 years.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, we're going to get more into it. I love it. It sounds like you've really crushed what you've done, and you've got something that's very tight knit, and you built it with passion. I mean, you've got a really, an awesome vision for it, and you brought that to life, and you're recognizing what's most important is the impact that you've created.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But Jeff, we're going to take it back. All right. So you started in '84 with this. We're going to take it before that. So tell us, we want the guest to get to, or the audience to get to know your journey, get to know you a little bit better.
Right.
So take us back. Where are you from? Maybe talk about your family and just the journey through life that's led you to where you're at today. And I'll hand you the reins.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
And I grew up with a real, a good parent model. My dad was a blue collar. Basically, he started wheel line. He basically created the Jiffy Lube and never franchised it. I mean, they did wheel alignment, they did brake service, oil changes, and he ended up, he rolled into like a 15-car garage in Central Florida.
Nice.
And so, man, did I have work ethic modeled in front of me, a German father and a Polish mother. And,
hell yeah.
And so even though I played football and everything, my dad was one of those guys that didn't really push me to, you play football, you play baseball. He did his grind, and he'd say, oh, well, you played last night. And he came to some games. He didn't come all to all of them, but he would also, like, at Saturday, today we're weeding. Today we're going to build the fence. And I'm like, I just went to practice. So it was different in the 60s and 70s growing up. Now we coddle our kids. You need the day off. And, my dad would get me up. If I had the day off, I remember playing high school football, being beat to hell, going to bed, and my dad get me up at 6 on Saturday.
Thanks, Dad.
And my mom never stopped it. And he goes, you're coming in with me today. You're going to clean the parking lot at the shop. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, no choice though.
There were some years of not hate, but gosh, Dad. But what he modeled in front of me was two things. One, life's about work. You work hard. Two, he was an independent guy with no college degree. That he moved from upstate New York, outside of Buffalo. My mom was from Pennsylvania. They moved to Florida. It was at that time it was one of the last frontiers. They moved down there in the 40s, and he started his own business. That always resonated to me and stayed in my head.
Of course.
That I was going to have my own business one day. It was just a given.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about college. And I definitely did enough, raked up enough and took the trash out of wheel weights and tire truings enough that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Put
bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, which I was a dummy because if I would have franchised, I would have done really great.
You're looking at Jiffy Lube like, damn it, man.
My brother went to law school. He was smart. We always say my brother got the brains and I got the bronze. But I was an athlete. I played high school football, wrestled, and did everything but baseball. And I really wanted to play college football.
Yeah.
My parents didn't even know. I don't think they cared if I went to college. I had an older brother that really became a visionary and pushed me. My brother Rick. He was a college swimmer, and he's the one that taught me about the weight room.
Is that your only sibling?
No, I had 5.
Oh, okay, sweet.
Yeah, 1 brother and 3 sisters, 5
Nice.
including me.
Nice.
My 1 sister's passed. All of us, I'm second to the baby. I mean, we're all old now. My
Yeah.
brother just turned 70, but you wouldn't know it. He's fit as can be. And
Hell yeah.
But he put me, we had the old Milo Steinburn plates in our garage down in Florida that were rusty, and that's how I started working out, probably 10 years old. And he had the vision of, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. And my parents loved that I went to college, but they didn't sit down with me and go, you're going to go to college.
Yeah.
He was like, you're going to work.
Yeah.
And my brother kind of learned that.
Whatever you do, just work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my brother learned that was a way out. And he ended up getting a college scholarship at Georgia State and was a swimmer. And he set the tone for me.
My dad was a swimmer too.
Was he?
Yeah, at the Citadel. Yeah.
Swimmers turn into triathletes.
Yeah,
Triathletes turn into Ironmen.
It makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
And so he was the guy that pushed me, in the weight room. And even though he was tall and thin and a swimmer, I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it. I was a football player. At that time, the golden era of bodybuilding was going on with the Arnolds and the Frank Zanes.
When you were going to college?
About the time I was getting in high school. Senior, I graduated in 81.
Sweet.
So,
Nice.
that was, all the bodybuilding was pretty big. They had Muscle Development magazine and Muscle and Fitness. It wasn't anything like it is now.
That's when bodybuilding was the coolest.
It was cool.
Everybody wants to replicate that era, but I don't think it can be done.
I don't think you can. It's just too many drugs and too many freaky people now.
Yeah,
And back then, they did some Dianabol and Anavor, but they really worked their ass off.
Yeah.
They, 2 dozen eggs a day, and I can talk about that later, my old school diet to what my diet is now. But anyways, that kind of influenced me to stay in the weight room. And then I ended up playing some college football. I signed actually with Carson Newman College, which is in Jeff City, Tennessee, Jefferson City. And transferred. They didn't have the transfer portal then. I just didn't like it, because it was a small school.
Yeah.
So I hauled butt and went down to WKU in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Nice.
And ended up getting a scholarship there and playing 3 years there.
What position did you play?
I signed as a linebacker. And
With that, it's close, but turn the front
this
side
way?
of it. Just like that.
there you go. I'm going to fall in love with this thing.
That's what you got to do.
That's what you got to do, man.
But what were you saying?
Kiss the mic. So when I basically went to Western, I transferred and I was a linebacker, but slow, big white guy. And I ended up being, believe it or not, I tell people all the time I was on the offensive line, I was a pulling guard.
Wow.
And the way that we ran the offense, we ran a power and a weak side. And the guy in front of me was 6'5". It wasn't 300 back then. 250 was big in the 80s.
Yeah.
But they put me in the pull and trap block because I was a linebacker. The coaches said, hey, let me try at guard because you got quick feet. You're 240. and you're going to get that linebacker on the backside. And I would take off, and he said, now keep your hands in, just knock the poop out of him. And I did. So he said, you're a guard. So, and I played special teams.
For people that don't understand, the pulling guard, it's not just a lineman that stands still. He's pulling around the line of scrimmage to be a lead blocker on that side.
Exactly. And you see a lot of the quarterbacks now, you know, like Mahomes will roll out, and the linemen are so quick and fast. Have somebody in front of him. He, you know, he cut blocks the guy and he throws the pass. So that's what I did. Then they'd pull me when it was pass blocking. I'll put the big guy, Jim King, back in. He was a monster.
So it's crazy. Yeah. When I was in high school, played ball, I started like in the middle of center, and then like I got bigger and they put me in guard doing the same thing, and then I got bigger by my senior year. They're like, all right, you're going to be a tackle. And they still had me pulling in, but yeah, that was my position. I like the offensive line, man. It was it's underrated, but like it was
much respect.
It was violent. It was dirty, you know, and I appreciated that.
Dirty and nothing would get done without it.
Yeah, I just wanted to run into people and I just wanted to get rough, man. And that's what that was like. That was the point.
That
of
was
it
the right position for you.
Yeah,
for sure.
So.
You know, what's crazy is that, you know, here I am 40 years later, so I'm in my 60s. I missed the whole jiu-jitsu thing and Taekwondo and all that stuff.
That's huge now.
It's huge. And I mean, back when and I'm shifting gears, but when the MMA started, it was Dan Severn's, and, you know, he would fight a guy that was a sumo wrestler.
Yeah, like UFC 1.
If you look at those, and Ken Shamrock.
And they were bare knuckle too, I think.
Yeah, bare knuckle. And then, you know, the Gracies got involved and the whole game changed. But I tell Nick all the time, and Tony, those guys all tease me, like, you should come and start. I go, listen, I spent 10 years fighting with my hands on the offensive line.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to get to work each day and come home.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I did that. And then, you know, after the football thing, I was big, you know, from 10 years of bulking up and 240. And I decided to try bodybuilding when I graduated. And at that time, it's probably one of the things I'm the most proudest of. It was 1984. And I was 22 years old, and I won the Mr. Kentucky. And I was the youngest guy to win it at that time. I'd cut down to about 210. And it was in Louisville, Kentucky at Spalding College. I still remember that. And I didn't realize how good I was until, you know, 30 years later. But I should have pursued it, and I stopped.
Oh, so you pretty much had a gift at it.
I had good symmetry. I never was a big, bulky bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But when I cut up, I had, you know, balance and good symmetry, vascularity, things like that.
Yeah, you just had the genetics for it to.
Yeah, and I didn't even know what that was back then.
To do well, yeah.
You
But you
know?
were just like, hey, I'm gonna give this a shot.
Yeah, and in talking about the golden era of bodybuilding, that's when you ate. The diet was you ate tuna fish out of the can.
Yeah.
While you were training in the middle of your sets, and drank water and ate, you know, eggs and. You know, the Rocky thing, raw eggs, and they didn't have great protein powder. They had desiccated liver tablets and things that stunk and were horrible. And I remember jamming all that down and did everything wrong, but somehow learned to thin down.
Yeah. I mean, there's a point to it all. I mean, I eat a ton of eggs. I eat like 10 eggs a day, you know, I eat a lot of red meat and stuff like that. But you know, you also over time learn what works for you.
Right.
Well, and I just know where I feel best, you know, and I don't eat till like 6 o'clock at night. I pretty much fast.
And that's what I do now. We'll talk about that because that's part of biohacking that I'm kind of into. As I haven't eaten today, I fast every day except for, I think Sunday we do brunch, my wife and I.
Yeah. My diet is very similar then. I get with that. Plus, I find that like eating, and I know this is totally off, but I find that eating makes me kind of tired.
Yeah, yeah.
And so as soon as I get something in my stomach, like I can just get kind of drowsy, and I'm like, man, but I want to keep going throughout the day. So I train in the afternoon, and then I get home, and that's when I get in all my macros, you know, in a couple meals. Yeah. And I feel better than I ever have.
Dude, it works. You know, up until, I guess, 58, when I had all my replacements and all that stuff in my 50s, I was about 220 and carried a lot of body fat. Just, you know, and we talk about that as you age, you know, just lower T and looser skin and all the, you know, difficulties that you come up as an aging adult male. But I started the intermittent fasting thing, and I stay at 200 to 195 now and under 10% fat.
Nice.
And I've gotten used to it. You know, I'm like you. I start my day at 5:30, so I'm grinding, and I don't want any food on my stomach.
I don't even want to heat a meal up. It's distracting to me.
Well, I'm like you. As soon as I eat at 4 o'clock, I get sleepy.
And I'm like, well, this is the time to do it. So
speaking of the UFC too, did you see Dana White doing the 86-hour fasting that's getting popular?
No, you know what? I saw that on Instagram. I was listening to it. Yeah,
seems like some people are, you know, a lot of after he had started doing that, a lot of people were doing it. I guess that's the point.
Yeah, and you know, and then I'm always open-minded, and now there's a lot of stuff backlash coming around where people saying it's overrated. The intermittent fasting isn't as good for you. You need to get up first meal. What's the shift now with like Peter Attia, Dr. Peter Attia, and Huberman and those guys is like your first your first meal is 30 or 40 grams of protein.
Yeah.
And you need to do it early.
I think I heard Peter H. was the one that was on Rogan and said that he only eats one meal a day, right?
I think so. I think he intermittent fast, but he's a big the big thing now that shifted is which I've always done, is high protein.
Yeah.
Higher protein, and worrying about that. That one macro gets neglected with, I've trained people for 40 years, and the number one thing is women and men, they don't get, how hard it is to get your protein in.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard. Oh, I had cottage cheese today. I'm like, is that it? So
you're barely scratching the surface, just
so
you know.
And then you want to put on good muscle and you're 52 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We got to change some things. So, yeah, I stay open-minded with nutrition. Like Nick is a big keto guy. Mm-hmm. I've tried keto, and I'll do good for a couple of days, and then I'll have a breakdown and eat a big bowl of jasmine rice, and that just throws it all to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
So, for me, the macro thing and then the higher protein and the clean carbs is how I can get lean.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, to me, my main focus, and I do this with clients too. I'm like, people are like, I don't want to try keto, and I'm like, okay, but is that sustainable for you? Like,
Right.
Do you think you are going to be keto long term?
Yeah.
So what can we do to build something sustainable for your body? Like, I love sweets, I love key lime pie, man. I'll eat a whole key lime pie on a Friday night.
Yeah.
That's my thing. But that's not keto friendly at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, I still want to be able to enjoy stuff like that. I'm very disciplined, but I still want to enjoy that stuff. So you find that balance, but I think it's really just being attentive to your body and find out what works for your energy and makes you feel better. I mean, my blood pressure's lower now, so I'm like, all right, let's tweak this and this. There's so much information out there and everybody's saying, well, this isn't as good for you. That's not good for you. But maybe it's just not good for this group of people, but for some people it works really well. Every individual is different. So I think it's just
a great point.
Testing a little bit of everything out until you're like, oh shit, I think I found what works.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it, but when I made a comeback to compete again the last couple of years, 26 years later, the diet's a little bit different. And I even had one of my guys that rents space for me. I said, listen, I don't want to think about this. I'm going to hire you.
Yeah.
You're going to hire me? And I said, yep, you're going to help me with my nutrition. And I was eating stuff I never ate before, prepping for a bodybuilding show. And I was like, you sure I should eat that Pop-Tart? And it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
So, again, I like your philosophy. I think you have to see what works for you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
For me, I eat a lot of game because I'm a big hunter, a lot of venison, elk, whatever.
Yep.
You give it to me, I'll eat it, and I just eat a lot of clean carbs. Now I do cheat, like you. Key lime pie, love it. Ice cream. The big thing is I try to do is, I'm not so sold on the one cheat day a week as opposed to the 90-10 rule.
Yeah.
I do better with that, knowing that if I want to have it, I'm going to have that Girl Scout cookie. Because what happens to me, like a lot of us, is when I go into deprivation, then I closet eat.
Oh yeah, you eat it.
And I eat it, and I tell my mind I did not eat it. And, my wife will wake up in the morning and goes, what are all these crumbs in the bed? I go,
it's like
I
a
don't
massacre.
know.
You're like some serial killer that blacked out.
The cookie
like,
monster.
there's crumbs everywhere.
She goes, are you sure you didn't bring any Girl Scout cookies here?
30 minutes already. This episode is sponsored by Desert Roads Arts. Check out Danny's stuff. She makes these excellent handmade rune malas. She's got all different colors, all different themes, all different meaning. And it helps you harness that ancestral power that you have. And I love them. I wear them every day. I've got these two that I wear specifically most of the time, but I've got an array of them. Definitely check out her website. You won't be disappointed. Like I said, handmade. She puts a lot of energy and intention into these pieces. And you can check her out at Desert Rose on Instagram. I'm pretty sure that's it. And when you check out, use the code RP15 for 15% off on your malas. I eat a lot of, I still have venison from last season. And I mix it up with like bison.
Sure.
And I go to Costco, so you get the big packets of that, and they got the Wagyu beef. I eat pretty much red meat, butter. I get good butter. I'm big on like Parmesan Reggiano because it's very low lactose, but it's high in protein. So like a quarter of a cup's like 9 grams of protein. So I put that on, on the meat, and I eat a lot of eggs and ghee.
Yeah, I do a lot of eggs
pretty
too.
Simply, I'll put sauerkraut on the meat sometimes, and that's about it. Keep it simple. I eat rice cakes a lot, when I'm around my training, but it's easy, it's efficient.
Yeah,
makes me feel good, and I just stick with that.
Do you do much jasmine rice or sweet potatoes, yellow Yukon Gold potatoes, anything like that?
So, honestly, sweet potatoes mess up my stomach.
Okay.
Yeah, they made me like shit too much.
Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not. And so I'm like, all right, I got away from sweet potatoes. I love jasmine rice. I thought about doing like trying to throw on just a little bit more size.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to start implementing just some jasmine rice post training.
Right.
With my meat and stuff like that. Just like a couple cups, 2-3 cups, and see how that goes for a little bit.
Right.
So I just do a lot of burpees. That's what keeps me in shape. I'm at like almost 16,000 burpees.
I actually saw that when I was, checking you out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope he doesn't make me do burpees. That's hard to do with a knee replacement.
Yeah, I know. I'm in them, and I'm like, I got this. And then I get home, and I'm like, all that up and down with all my knee issues. I'm like, oh God.
And the rod in your femur, that's incredible.
Yeah, and my arthritis is
down.
insane. Like Lydia's already said, she's like, you're probably gonna have to get a knee replacement in the next several years. And I'm like, that sounds terrible, but I mean, I might have to resort to that.
Yeah, well, go the stem cell route first.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it happen. Like, screw a Rolex. I just want stem cell injections. So,
So we were at where in your story?
Well, I was
talking
basically
bodybuilding,
talking
right?
about, after football, I did bodybuilding.
of course.
Right, gotcha.
And, I'd won the Mr. Kentucky. It was the second, I did a little show in basically Bowling Green, Mr. Southern Kentucky, and that gave me the bug. But I was already training, and eating like we talked about, the way Arnold and those guys used to eat. There was nobody that you could hire. What do? You eat tuna fish and eggs, and you drink water, and we didn't have pre-workout drinks. I drank lots of coffee, to get caffeine up to get through the workout. Totally did it wrong. Most of the time I was carb depleted and really skinnier than I should have been.
Yeah.
But then after that, I got married at a young age. My first marriage, I was like 24, turning 25 after that bodybuilding show, which obviously took me out of bodybuilding. At that time I was working for a racquetball club, and that's when I was doing Nautilus and training for no money at all. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, I got a gift here, man. I'm helping people. And, like I said, I got minimum wage. It was horrible when I think back at that stuff. But it's an evolution, right? Everything's an evolution. So, then I decided to go to graduate school. I knew I needed more, and so at that time, the PE curriculum had branched out, and they were bringing in exercise science and kinesiology and sports performance, and it was a little bit more diverse.
Yeah.
And I could go back and study something I liked. I wanted to learn more about exercise. I wanted to learn more about what happens when you do this. What is maximum oxygen consumption? Why do I need this? I want to learn more cardiopulmonary health and metabolic panels. And so I went to, at that time I'd taken a job for Lake Barkley State Park. I was in Western Kentucky, and they wanted to put a wellness center in. And so I was hired there by somebody that knew the governor. And I put a wellness center in the first state park wellness center in the state of Kentucky. And this was in the mid 80s to late 80s. And at that time, I started going to Murray State. Murray State's about 20 minutes away, and started grad school. And I was doing it in exercise phys. And that's where I really started studying and really getting into my, undergrad stuff was,
breaking it all down. Yeah.
Yeah. I was partying, playing football. I hated college. And then I was like, man, this is what I'm all about. And that was in the mid 80s. At that time, I got to back up. When I was in Florida, raised by the blue collar, great businessman, good man. My father, his name was Lucky. He was a big hunter. Okay. And so I grew up hunting. And the first thing I ever harvested was a wild pig, a hog. So I grew up a hunter, and I grew up a workout guy. And those are my two passions. My brother was a swimmer. He collected coins. He went hog hunting a few times, didn't like it like I did. So I became my dad's buddy.
Yeah.
And every time, we did hard work on Saturday, we hunted on Sunday, and sometimes we hunted in the afternoons. We had a hunting camp that was about 30 minutes outside of Orlando. All that property now is gazillions of dollars. I don't even know if it's still there. It's owned by the Mormon religion, the Desiree Ranches of Florida. They own most of Central Florida, and those are high dollar leases now. But then we were hunting, off the St. Johns River and the Eklon-Nohatchee, the Econ River we called it, and lots of cypress. And so I grew up a hunter. So when I was in Kentucky in school, I looked for farms to hunt too. It was in my blood, and I loved to hunt. So when I was, this is when, I was going to grad school at Murray State, I met these two guys that started this call company called Night and Hale Game Calls, Harold Knight and David Hale, very influential in my life. And I became a turkey hunter.
Okay.
And I killed my first turkey about 1982, 1983.
I haven't been turkey hunting yet.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten there. But it's one of my lives because I became a champion caller. So it's something we can talk about later. But anyway, so I had this really weird thing. I was a strength athlete, bodybuilder, and now I'm this turkey caller. And I met these guys, and I was just taken by duck calling, and you could mimic these animals.
Will you just break that down to because I have a lot of family in Kentucky. That did a lot of hunting, and people up there just walk around with turkey calls in their mouths, and, all the time and stuff like that, just doing it for fun and stuff. But it's like a art, like it's like a whole, and the way you build it, each one is different, and
that's what I fell in love with. It. You could actually, the only thing close to it is elk hunting. Elk hunting, you use a mouth diaphragm or a bugle tube, and you're trying to cow call and get the bull elk to come in. Everything's built around rut, food, and sex. So it's a breeding season. Same thing with the big gobblers. And so I learned to call with a mouth call, a friction call, and started killing some turkeys, and the thing about it is really significant to me. It's the greatest cat and mouse game you'll ever play. So if you live in Kentucky or you live in Tennessee or you live in Georgia or Alabama or Missouri is a big calling state. Calling is like playing the violin. It's an art. Yeah.
Dude, it's like a whole thing, dude.
I didn't know this.
And you put together different notes to make almost like a song. Like
they're yelping, a turkey yelps. A hen does 25 different things. A gobbler does a bunch of different things. But so you're emulating a hen during the breeding season, whether you're yelping or cutting or, purring, cluck purring, and to get the gobbler pumped up, he comes in and then you shoot him in the face, for lack of better words.
And it's also a device, right? Like there's something you put in your mouth. It's not like you're just making the sounds like out loud, but and that's what I mean about how they're made differently. Like, and I think it's the duck calls that are more like
reed calls. Those are called reed calls.
Okay.
And then you've got friction calls. You've seen the little barrel calls with striker.
Yep.
Okay. Paddle calls. And what I got into, what you're talking about, is the mouth diaphragm.
Yep.
It's a metal frame with some tape on it and latex layered, and it's manipulated different ways. And
very strange shaped thing when you
it was weird, and because these guys were calling champions, and Katie's, Kentucky's where I lived. It's still there. It's a small little town.
My family's in Brandenburg, like right outside of Louisville.
Okay, yeah. So I was all over the west part of the state, and Hopkinsville, Kentucky, lots of big bucks. And so I put a call in my mouth one day, and being a former athlete and being competitive, one of the guys in the company, he goes, "Put that down. You'll never learn how to do that." And I was like, "Whoa, okay."
I'll show you.
I took that guy home, started practicing, and next thing I know, I got in a contest and came in second. And the next thing I know, a year later, I was the state champion in Kentucky.
So how do you compete in calling? Do you just all do your calls, and then what are the criteria for it?
It's a great question. You basically, there's like 12 or 15 calls that are standardized calls. So the yelp of a hen, the cluck of a hen, the gobble of a gobbler, the cluck purr, Kiki run. I know it sounds stupid, doesn't it? There's all these different calls, but the judges are biologists and, like TWRA guys and, commissioners, and they draw them out of the hat. You write up the list, and that's what you get, and you compete. And so when they say contestant number 9, the yelp of a hen, you got it. They can't see you. You're behind, a board,
gotcha.
and they basically are scoring you. It's pretty sophisticated.
That's crazy. I'm completely ignorant to this because I'm aware that animals make different sounds, but I figured hey, just do a turkey call. It's like you're going to do the same call every time. And So to me, I'm like, holy shit, there's a whole language you got to learn.
No, it is.
You may be able to elaborate, or you would be able to elaborate on this a lot more than I am. But I mean, that's it's a language, but it's for like you were talking about mating, right? Like, so it's kind of like in nature, like each turkey's probably going to make a slightly different call, or no?
Well, they can do all these different things. I've had hens cluck purr a gobbler in, which is a real quiet, subtle call. You can never determine what they're going to do, but you need to have, you need to know how to do all of it if you want to have variety in your pack, So I'll give you a great example. I just finished we were talking about bucket list earlier, you and I were, and one thing I wanted to do was the World Slam of turkey calling. There's 5 different species. There's 4 in North America. 6, and there's 2 in Mexico. And again, it takes money, it takes time off from work, family, all that stuff. Well, finally this year, one of my best friends and I were able to go to the Yucatan forest, the peninsula in north of Guatemala, and get the last turkey on my list that I needed was called the ocellated. And he doesn't even, those birds, he didn't even gobble. They do this weird, I can't even describe it. It's almost like a peacock.
Yeah.
But I needed that bird, to be able to say I finished the World Slam. And so they don't even have a call perfected down there. So what the guides use is they use an electronic call. They made electronic call, or those fox pros, like you'll see guys at Coyote Call around here.
Yeah.
And it's a squealing rabbit or something like that. So it emulates the hen of the ocellated species. It's the wildest thing I ever saw. My guide was with me, and he took this thing and put nothing natural out of his voice, and it was electronic, boom. And then this gobbler would do this thing like a peacock. It was weird. But anyways, so
yeah, no, that's wild.
Crazy. Yeah, and there's guys that like Will Primos and Harold and David and all these guys, Quaker Boy calls, that have made tons of money in the United States selling calls. You would never think that.
Crazy.
I used to go, Nashville's kind of the king of all the conventions now. Everything's here now.
Yeah, it is.
True.
It's a central location for SCI comes here now. The
If you
Safari
guys
Club
listen, you guys
International.
can stop doing that for the record, but go somewhere else, please.
I know, right? So the National Wild Turkey Federation is here, convention every year, every February, and it's packed. And they sell calls and camo and guns, and it's incredible. It's an incredible sport. And I was really glad that I got into it in the 80s, and now I just hunt for fun. But anyways, going back to my story's, I've lived a lot of different lives.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to connect back to that with something I was going to ask you earlier. So you had the calling and the hunting and the bodybuilding.
Right.
I played football for 15 years. I wanted to play college football desperately, and I didn't. Did those things help you move on from the sport? Did you have any issue moving on from the sport?
You mean like the turkey calling and bodybuilding?
Yeah, like football, did that give you something to put, your pack?
Yeah.
Because I think that's an issue for a lot of athletes, right?
Yeah.
At any level, when they stop playing that sport, they feel very lost.
Yeah, they put all their eggs in that basket, and they don't really grow in other places.
Right.
Therefore, when that's done, they're like, what the hell do I do now?
At any level, right? Like pros talk about dealing with this. I didn't even play in college, and I dealt with it a whole lot.
That's a great question.
It's big in the Olympics, too.
Yeah, well,
Huge
a lot of guys
issue.
well, look at Tom Brady, how many times he's come out of retirement. It's kind of hard to compartmentalize and
He
be
went home and
something else.
hung out with Giselle and the kids for a couple of days. He was like, you know what? I'm not that sore.
Yeah. Well, so for me, it was bodybuilding because I was already kind of into bodybuilding when I played football. My brother got me into lifting.
It's
I really
a natural
loved it.
transition. I feel like
Yeah,
because you're
and I
already
thought,
doing a lot of that.
now I'm done with this football thing. Had no chance of playing pro. I was just a thick guy that loved the game. I always say there's football players and there's athletes that play football. I was a football player.
Yeah.
Like you, I can tell looking in your eyes. If I say run into that wall, you're going to knock that wall down.
Hell yeah.
You don't care if you're bleeding. You do your thing.
Yeah, I'm all about running into walls.
It was so funny. Every year on our team, we had like open tryouts in the
Yeah.
spring. And the first thing that the guys would do that were trying out would work out with us for like a few days.
Right.
And it was so funny every single time, like the guys that would go in there and just be absolute workout warriors. And the moment you put actual pads on, they're like the most like,
They didn't want to hit you.
yeah, no aggression almost. Like it's like, damn, you looked really good whenever you were doing a bench press, but that's not what this is. You know?
And that's the football athlete thing.
Exactly.
So I knew I had no chance at pro. But I thought, you know what? I've lifted all these years, started lifting when I was 10 or 12. I'm going to try bodybuilding. So, and then getting into that, and I was already a hunter, and then moving to Katie's and being, if you weren't a hunter and you lived in Katie's, Kentucky, I don't know what you're going to do.
You're like, who's that weirdo? Yes. Yeah. They like single you out, like non-hunters sit here.
Well, I was an outsider for sure, but I got in good graces quick because I was a hunter.
Yeah.
And I could shoot a bird. I could call one up.
Hell yeah.
By the way, when you're hunting, what are you using?
Great question. You can use, it's usually a shotgun, for turkeys. It's a scatter gun. A lot of guys, I've killed a few with a bow. I'm not as passionate. I love bow hunting and I'm an archer, but with a turkey, I've missed so many with a bow. I'm going to hit them with bow womb. if I can get them in, it's so hard to get a gobbler in 40 yards.
You don't want to miss at that point.
Yeah. You may not only have 2 opportunities a season. And so I want to harvest the bird. So I use a 12 gauge. I use a Benelli Black Eagle. A lot of guys are going to 410s now, a smaller load, because they want to be able to one arm it. And it's just like going to a bow. It's a little bit more smaller, a little bit more challenging. So, but I still carry big.
You ever watch Cam Hanes stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about it. The interesting thing that, I was telling Joe that when, again, back to my story, as I became a really good caller and won a couple state champions, I started doing seminars and working for Night and Hail part-time as a hobby. Didn't make a lot of money from it. Say, hey, we'll pay you to go down. At that time, I spoke down here a lot. There was never Academy Sports. It was called Sports Unlimited. Do you guys remember that?
I think I do.
That was a big change.
I think I do.
Big chain. And I spoke and did turkey seminars, and Realtree sponsored me. I had some Realtree clothing. And so, but when I would do the shows, I started to qualify for nationals, which is like the Super Bowl turkey calling. And I would go to those things. And, all the good old boys would, I had a nickname. They called me Fake Muscles.
Yeah.
Fake muscles?
Yeah, because I was a lifter and here I was a hunter. So I was a redneck and a lifter. So it was interesting. You know, was not popular in the 80s.
That wasn't a thing then.
No, there was one guy, Ricky Joe Bishop, who was 2-time national champion.
Ricky Joe
from Georgia. And I don't know if the guy's still alive or around, but he was a sweetheart of a guy, but he was a lifter. He'd come talk to me, how much can you bench, dude? And I'm like, these other guys, man, they're making fun of me, saying I've never cut tobacco. I've never worked a day in my life. And so when I lived in Kentucky, I started cutting tobacco and baling hay just so I could show them that I could, you know.
Use your strength?
Yeah. I played football, dude. I can throw hay.
Yeah, it's more than a look. It's not just superficial. Yeah,
but I got the respect of those guys in the rural parts of Kentucky. And being from Florida too, I was an outsider. Even though I was a redneck, you get past Ocala, Florida, and you're in Georgia again. I tell people, they go, "Didn't you grow up in Boca Raton or in the beach and laying out?" I'm like, I went to the beach. I could surf, but no, I was a redneck.
Yeah, so, I love how people generalize it. They're like, "Oh, they picture you're in Florida. You just live on the beach by the water."
Sissy.
I'm like, man. Florida gets pretty damn country.
It's real country.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, I've lived in Kentucky, I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived in Florida, and probably had more country boys down there.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, my brother Brett, he lives in like Chumuckla, Florida, so like the north, you know, up by the
it's an Indian town,
Alabama line. Yeah, and it's that area is just all farmland. It's country as hell up there.
Dude, swamps and
I was about to say the swampland is about as country as you can get.
Yeah, that's not what people think of Florida, but it's there.
No, it's there.
So where were you at just now? You were talking about the championships. You were doing consulting for them.
When I was calling the fake muscle thing, we were talking about Cam Haynes, who I've never met, and I know a lot of guys one degree away from him. I'll meet him one day. He's really close friends with Bert Soren from Sornex, the president of Sornex, who's become a friend, and I carry all Sornex equipment in my gym. But it wasn't popular. It wasn't popular lifting and shooting. And the concept of Instagram, all of a sudden in 2020, I picked up a phone and got an Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're really cool if you hunt and lift weights. And back when I was doing it, I was made fun of. And a lot of guys that I would never name any names that are still in the industry now who aren't in great shape, who are my age and don't look like I look. And I was calling with them when they were 30 and, make fun of me now, but
they're falling apart.
Kind of seems like a good physique would go naturally with hunting.
Well, you'd think so. What Cameron Haynes did, he's a hardworking blue-collar guy from Oregon who has always hunted, grew up with some great mentors. He killed a lot of elk. He's a great archer, and he was an ultra-marathoner, and he's brought strength in, and he's made it popular.
Now he's well-versed.
And he's the guy right now that people are lifting weights, and they're seeing, which Strong2Hunt, what I'm trying to do is not actually a play off that. It's just bringing those two hobbies together. And my exercise phys background, basically working with hunters to prep for hunting out west, which is super demanding, what he does all the time. Yeah. He made it real popular.
It's no easy feat. And was when you talked about, everybody giving you shit for being this, bodybuilder, hunter guy.
Yeah. With a mouth diaphragm.
Yeah, right. It was his post grad school, correct?
This was during grad school.
During grad school, okay. Yeah, because I'm curious to hear about, that journey there through grad school. Obviously, you accomplished that and forward.
I worked for the park system, and I put that wellness center at Lake Barkley. So that's Cadiz, Kentucky right there. And I did about, it's cool.
What was it you said you put a park?
Lake Barkley State Park. It's in Cadiz, Kentucky, right?
It was telling us about it a little earlier.
Yeah, so I went there, and that was my second job out of college, and that's when I went back to school at Murray State. And at the same time, simultaneously, I met David and Harold and became a caller.
Okay.
So I was a champion caller in graduate school running this wellness center for the State Park of Kentucky and hunting my ass off. Yeah. It was a job I wish I got now because I could eat for $1. I got paid money, and I hardly went in because I had all this comp time working for this Department of Parks. And, you're off this week. I'm like, great, I'll go goose hunting.
Nice.
And I was in the woods all the time. And I actually really, really learned to turkey hunt, goose hunt, waterfowl hunt. I was already a deer hunter, but I ran up and down Land Between the Lakes, which, runs all the way down here to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And it's, the Cumberland River is part of Lake Barkley. Kentucky River is Tennessee. The Tennessee River is Kentucky Lake. And it makes that peninsula in the west part of Tennessee all the way up to Kentucky, to Paducah, and Grand Rivers. So the same time frame, I started a guide service called the Predator Guide Service, and I was guiding too.
Nice.
So I was a
for,
workaholic.
What does that look
guided
like?
hunts?
Yeah,
pretty
Guided
much?
hunts for wild turkey. Yeah, guys would get drawn. They didn't know where to begin. And I already had a reputation. I was 2-time Kentucky State champion. I was in the Grand Nationals, top 10, yada, yada. So I started charging, man. So I really was doing that before personal training.
So if me and Joe came out to do like a hunt and you were the guy, like what would that entail?
Well, I'd have to put you up. If I didn't have lodging for you, then we'd get you a hotel room somewhere in Katie's. We'd get your license all lined up, and then we meet at 5 a.m. I'd pick you up in my big bad truck, and
I got a good
I'm gonna
hammock.
get you on a bird.
I put my hammock up. I'm good to
Fit
go.
your hammock?
Yeah, I love my hammock.
A lot of guys would camp and land between the lakes, and
That's
then
what I would do, yeah.
I'd pick them up. I'd pick them at their campsite, and we'd hunt our butt off all day.
That sounds fun.
Until I got on my bird. It was fun as hell.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
So, like, obviously, so you were wearing all these hats. You were doing all these things. How did that all, I mean, but you were able to obviously handle it
And you were talking
all.
about getting married around that time too, right?
I was married. I was my first marriage.
Was already married. You're
Any
right,
kids
right.
yet?
I think right about when I graduated, I had my first son.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Perfect
Maybe
timing.
91, 92, he's 32 or 33.
Yeah, and you were obviously like a really good student because you were able to focus on something you were really passionate about.
I love the subject. I love kinesiology. I love the study of scientific movement.
Mm-hmm.
I started learning about metabolism and oxygen consumption, and how to build muscle, but also nutrition. And, I wouldn't say I'm ahead of my time, but I was into it as it started to really get popular.
Of
and all
course.
these majors kind of came off of that, curriculums.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing like, where I'm going with school, right? I mean, you were just like, going through it. And then your heart called you to go back and pursue this thing.
Right.
And you were super fired up and you did well. And I mean, same thing with me. I'm like, when I graduated from college, I was like, I'm never going back to school.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, I can't wait to start my classes here in January because you're so fascinated by that subject that you want to pursue on a whole nother level.
And that's what you want. You want to find what, it took me a while to find my passion. I was a strength guy, a bodybuilder guy. I loved working out. I loved making change, and I loved the outdoors.
Of course.
So for me, I never made an A until I was in graduate school.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I was a C student, I don't know, 2.6, something like that in undergrad. And even though I was in PE, I was learning how to carry on a racquetball tournament, and it just wasn't what I was going to do.
Yeah.
But then when I got into kinesiology and got into exercise phys and anatomy 1 and 2 and statistics, I was like, damn, I love this. This is
fired
awesome.
up, yeah.
Yeah. And, I hate to say it, here I am bragging, but I was a straight A student to my last class. In statistics too, I made a B. So I didn't graduate with a 4.0.
You're like, damn it. You just go back and take that one class.
I know. I should.
Fix
I
this.
should. I went up to the instructor and said, I was going to graduate with a 4. I go, sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. That's life, I guess.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that keeps you humble.
Oh yeah,
That's cool.
It does. So you got married right after grad school, or
I got
you got
married before grad school,
Yeah, you got
really
married-
too young.
Yeah.
And that marriage didn't work.
Of course.
Got divorced and came to Nashville.
Almost got married around that time as well. That same age.
I just think,
Yeah.
the way I was raised, that you found the first woman that liked you and you married her.
I think a lot of people are like that. I mean, I think that's definitely past generations is more so like that. But I didn't meet my wife till after 30, and it's the best decision I ever made, but I've been engaged twice prior, and I called him. I was like, nope, this is wrong. I can see my future. And so I called him off, and I met her, and I'm like, well, I guess this is the right time. It's crazy, but don't marry the first person.
No, people are like, you grew up in Florida. You were probably like running women up and down the coast. Like, no, you don't understand. I didn't. I wasn't. I wasn't me. And so, I got divorced, came to Nashville, and the love of my life I found 5 years later that I'm married to now. Kathy, we've been married 23 years.
Nice.
Nice.
So after school, run a little bit. So after school, you had your kid.
Yeah.
And then how long after that did you get divorced, or like what
We're just
was
trying to connect
what
this-
happened?
the
until
dots.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
trying to connect the journey.
I then I had a daughter, and then we were going to move to Nashville. Marriage was failing, and you don't say accidents and things, but I had a daughter coming, and then she was born. And at that time, we knew the marriage was not going to make it.
Yeah.
And I knew I married the wrong woman. Just she wasn't anything like me. And I took a job with HCA, Hospital Corporation of America, and they were putting another wellness center in. You guys are from here. So Madison, it used to be called Nashville Memorial Hospital. It's now called Skyline.
I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So I took the job there, and I was 32, maybe 31, early 30s. Got divorced in Tennessee, and was single for about until I was 38, 6 years.
Okay. And you're still with the hospital?
I was with the hospital. I'd already graduated with my master's, and I began my coaching career because we started to, at that time we started charging. You need help, it costs money,
Yeah.
And had a big wellness center. It was very successful. Did really well. Didn't meet my wife yet. I was single for a while. And then I met some guys in Cool Springs. It's kind of cool being in your 60s because you go back and go, man, I was a trailblazer. I did something really cool, and if I would have stayed with it. So you know how on fire Cool Springs is.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you about kind of the experience of seeing how Nashville in particular has changed.
Well, if I would have stuck to, so listen to this. So I'm in Madison, Goodlettsville area, worked out in Hermitage. So North Nashville was my stomping grounds. I mean, I trained at the Old World Gym where Jeff Jarrett, the wrestlers all trained, and, all those guys that don't wrestle anymore. And it was interesting. But I got an opportunity with a doctor that I met to open a place in Cool Springs when it was just being built out, and it was in the mid-90s, and we called it Max Life. And what we decided to do is he was going to do the physician physical. So it's kind of like life science. The whole physician physical thing started getting red hot. So you get a whole executive workup, and then they'd send you to the pharmacy, which was me, and I'd put you on a program. So I was the exercise physiologist. You got to see me, and you got to see the physician. It's pricey. And there was one gym out there at the time, one gym which closed, and, the mall was just built and there was stuff going on, but it wasn't on fire like it is now.
Yeah.
And I look back, I'm like, gosh, because there's, all those clubs out there and all those thousands of people out there. If I could have just hung in there, but
a little bit longer.
This is what's crazy. The physician got mad, the doctor that I was partners with, because I was making all the money. And nobody wanted a $900 self-pay physical. Nobody wanted a prostate check to do wellness.
Yeah.
Sorry. Great concept. And there are people that go and fly around the executives and they do executive physicals, but they're doing that for a reason to get an executive physical. They're not doing that to hire a coach and do personal training.
Yeah.
So the model meant well, but it didn't work. And so I was making all the money. I mean, I had hundreds of clients, and some of them are still with me today. It takes two. So in the same time frame, in around 98, I met my wife that I married. And there's so many stories, dude. I could be on your show 10
How
times.
did you meet her?
Oh, man, I knew you were going to ask me that. So,
if you want to finish your other thought first, you can.
Oh, gosh, it's a big story. It's a great story. At the time I met her, I decided to roll out on my own because I was making money training and coaching, and it was red hot. And I had a following in Cool Springs. So we decided we're getting married, and I'll tell you how I met her because it's a great story. And we decided to do Takes Two Fitness, and that's where we emphasized off the biblical term of two are better than one. And we said, we want to camp out on a good name. We want it to mean something to people. It's about relationships. And it was really, really blessed, man. She helped me get it started. We had 2 or 3 employees. I mean, our second employee we hired was Carolyn Hammond, Sean's wife.
Okay.
And she's still with us today.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Almost 23 years ago.
That tells you something too.
Yeah, well, the Hammonds are just special people, man. They're Kentucky bred and born, and they're really great folks.
Get Sean on here. Before we get there, take us back to the comeback of your bodybuilding career, because you had taken a break there.
Yeah, I quit in '84. I felt like all I wanted to do was be the state champ. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just did it and won second show, and I had offers for sponsorship to move to California. Actually, a guy named Rich Gaspari, you probably heard of him. He started Gaspari Nutrition.
Oh, he's kind of known.
Yeah, he's pretty known.
Yeah.
They were recruiting him and me in the early 80s, company in Rosemead, California, to come out and do their supplements and live out there. When I went through the agent that talked to me, what I'd have to do, I was like, I can't, the drug program, everything they showed me, and this is back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I was just getting married. I was a young kid. I said, no, I can't afford that. And I'm not going to, at that time, be married and go out here and do all that, because they thought I had potential. So I just quit bodybuilding. So between the time when I took the job at Memorial Hospital and when I met Kathy and started Takes Two in the late 90s, I decided to bodybuild again.
Okay.
So I've always trained. When you say comebacks, it's not like you laid around on your ass and ate donuts and didn't do anything for a year or 10 years. I would always train, but I didn't always train with perspective to compete. I just lifted, and most of my lifting was to stay in shape and condition for hunting in my lifestyle.
And just enjoyment.
Yeah, enjoyment. You want to be in shape. You want a low body fat. You want to have good, max VO2. And so I decided in 97, 96, I got divorced in 95, and I decided to take that year to heal like we all do and bodybuild. So I needed to focus.
Yeah.
And visited my kids. I got my kids every other weekend, and then they moved to Alabama. I got them once a week, a month. And so between that, the Memorial Gym, and bodybuilding, I was able to cleanse myself and heal.
Okay.
What were you specifically, you think, trying to heal from?
From the divorce.
Right. But
yeah. I got divorced,
what was going on?
And so I needed a refocus as a single guy, being 36 years old.
Yeah, your whole life flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not
That
easy.
sounds like a stupid question. I'm basically just trying to get into your head at that time period.
So I wasn't depressed or anything because I knew I was the wrong woman. It's just all those years. I spent 8 years, had a house, had 2 children, the stress of, the split family and, busting my butt to get down and get them in karate and coach them and then take them back. And that's exhausting.
I mean, it's a lot on your plate for sure.
A lot. So I said, I need an outlet. So I decided to compete again. And I trained hard for a year. One of my buddies trained with me, a guy named Brian Seeliger. He's around somewhere. But we pushed really hard, and I was 36 years old, and I, entered the Mr. Tennessee MPC, and it was down in Memphis, and they called it War on the River. It's pretty cool. But back the dieting had gotten better. So I was learning how to, eat some rice and do some carb loading. I was learning how to cut my water, things I didn't know how to do.
Prior to that.
Yeah. And they had just started, I think it was tanning cream then, like QT. It wasn't tan, you weren't getting spray tanned yet. You'd be orange. Every dude was orange as hell. Remember that?
Yeah.
Their faces orange or they were white. And so you just didn't look near as aesthetically pleasing as you do now. And so I competed and I won the Masters, the overall Masters, the heavyweight open. I lost the overall to the short class guy. They didn't call it short class then. Lightweight, sorry. So anyway, I came in second overall, but I won the heavyweight, which is hard as hell to do anymore in Tennessee. The guys are huge here now.
Yeah, they are.
And then I won the Masters 35 over, and then I won the overall Masters. So I won like 3 first place and retired again. And, that we're going to skip some stuff, but that fast forwards to this year.
Of course.
And last year. I was 37 years old. So in 2022, we, like I said, you and I could talk forever, but I had my knee replaced, hip replaced, all in my 50s from all the battles, and got my body back together. Again, wasn't in bad shape, wasn't in great shape, and needed something to train for. And during COVID, and started focusing again. I thought, man, I'm going to make a comeback when I turn 60. So 2 years ago, I turned 60, and I wanted to be in the Masters. I thought it'll be fair because I'm 60.
Yeah.
I'm not going to compete against the 30-year-olds anymore. And man, has it really progressed. Even the 50 and 6-year-olds were big. And, as I walked on the stage and I did really well, again, one of my guys helped me, John Mankin. He's a great dude. And he helped me with food and accountability and check-ins. I didn't even know what you didn't get paid for helping a bodybuilder in the 80s when I was doing it. Now you do. It's a big business. I got my coach. I hired my coach. He's going to look at me tonight. Like, what's he going to look at?
Yeah. There's coaches. I don't even, with all my training, I just don't take on bodybuilders because it's a whole nother job. Nothing against it, but like there's people that just work with competitors.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. I'm just I want to work with people but like lifestyle. Yeah.
You're exactly right. You know where the mecca of bodybuilding in Tennessee is? Right here.
Right here. Yeah.
Right
Murfreesboro, a lot of people don't realize that, but
it's the mecca of and one of the top bodybuilding cities in the country.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Tennessee's moved way up.
It's insane.
Yeah. And who knows why, but it is. And so, I walked in 2022, I was going to be in the Masters. I thought, what's funny about your life, and you'll see this, have you guys watched the Stallone documentary on Netflix?
I've not.
Highly recommend it.
Okay.
I watched it twice already, but he talks about all the successes in the movie franchises he created, but he said his life has gone by like sitting on a subway and in the environment and the trees going by fast. He gets that fast. And all of a sudden I'm 77. And he said, do I have regrets? He goes, yeah. But those regrets still drive me to do other things artistically. So my point in that is it goes so quick, but your mind doesn't, if you're really blessed and your mind's in good shape, your mind doesn't age.
Yeah.
You still think you can, deadlift 600 pounds, or you go grab something, go, oh man, but your body does. And so I went on stage, and I did my prep, felt good. It was 195. Thought I looked like I did in the 80s and the early 90s. And I didn't, but I looked pretty good for my age. But I being competitive, I decided to be in the 60-year-old bodybuilding, 60-year-old. Now, again, back up again, bodybuilding's changed. You got all these categories now. You got men's physique.
There's a ton. Yeah.
You've got classic bodybuilding. You've got bodybuilding. You've got, if you're a girl, you got bikini and wellness and blah, blah, blah. I was overwhelmed. Like, what class do I get in? So I got in the classic bodybuilding, which is like the 1980s era, in regular bodybuilding, which was my forte. Then I decided to think that my body was better than it was, and I got in the 50-year-olds.
Wow.
So why did I do that? Well, 10 years makes a big difference, right?
Yeah.
So I competed. I did really well. I was blessed, and I won the classic physique, and then I won the bodybuilding at 50, but I lost the bodybuilding at 60, and I lost the bodybuilding at 50. Came in second. Still, it was good. Good enough for my wife. She said, you're done now, right? Because if you've never, walked that course with somebody, you get really grumpy.
That's what everybody always says. You got to have somebody that understands that process. Yeah.
And she cooked for me, and we were baking fish every night. It's if you work a full-time job, you're cooking all the time. You're a professional eater.
Oh,
I tell people. So wasn't happy with it. Didn't tell anybody. Now fast forward to this year, 2023. Because when I retired a champion. I'm like, I'm not going to get second places. So I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell any of the guys I work with. I think I told maybe Nick. Didn't tell Carolyn. I just kept training. I stayed close to 200, 205 pounds, and I stayed pretty lean. I thought, man, I'm going to do it again. And I could tell by the mirror I'd put on some good size. I was on creatine and trying to really, change some supplementation in my aminos, and I looked a little bit bigger. So I did it again in August. I just did it.
Yeah.
And I won both sides. I won the bodybuilding 60-year-old, and I won the classic physique 60-year-old.
Hell yeah.
Congratulations.
And so now congrats. I can retire across the board that I was a champ again 26 years later. So for me,
feeling.
Well, the feeling about it is that, my kids, everybody said, why are you doing that, Dad? I said, because I can. And, in life, when I had my knee replaced or hip, or like your motorcycle accident, you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Without a doubt.
And so when you do those damn burpees in there, on my birthday last Friday, I did 1,000 step-ups, the CrossFit Chad, honorable veteran thing. Yeah. Suicide prevention. I did 1,000 step-ups.
Oh, yeah.
So I kicked my ass. But, again, the reason I do hard things and I train hard because I can.
Exactly.
Huberman on Huberman's Lab, he'll say, you do the hard things because you prepare, because life is going to throw hard stuff at you sometimes. And if you prepared for that, it's easier to get through.
That's a fact.
And that's a fact, right? We say we train hard, life's easy. Train easy, life's hard. And so for me, it's because I can. Now, I'm not going to go do 1,000 every day. But even though you're doing burpees every day.
Yeah. I did 1,000 one day. But was pretty killer. Well, but like you said, it's because you can. People are like, why? And I'm like, it's for me.
Yeah.
I can do it. It pushes me. It's just this self-action, this push to do something that's uncomfortable every day because just because
and
nothing crazy to it.
No, but for me, it's like a mantra. It's like a form of worship.
It's
I
ritual.
can say, well, thank you, God, that I'm 62 and healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you that I can move.
Well, like he said, it's like I've said a million times, like when I train, I make it a ritual. When I get in there, it's a ritualistic thing.
Yeah.
And I keep that mindset to it. So to me, like I use this, but it's a holy act, and I've got to do it.
Yeah.
So
we have about 20 minutes on this segment to wrap up. And I know you have a question that we always ask. So I'm going to throw a question at you first real quick, and then that may wrap us up. If you could talk to your 26 years ago champion self, what would you tell him?
1997. About life?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You will get hurt. You will press on.
I'm trying to imagine in your head the time between those two things is so significant that it's got to be surreal almost.
Yeah.
And so I guess to kind of encapsulate that, if you were having a conversation with yourself the last time you were a champion, what would you say?
So a lot of wisdom, between the 26 years for sure. I would probably tell myself kind of what I did, keep training, but that, for me, I don't think it got easier, it got harder. It's really hard. So, this as you age, it's so much harder to hold muscle mass. The thing I'm grateful for, And I don't know if I ever would have done it if I got out of the fitness business. If I became an accountant or a counselor or was an entrepreneur and opened up some kind of different kind of business, because, I was called to the physical part of life, I continued to train.
Yeah.
As part of my job description. So, I don't know what I'd tell myself any different life-wise. I think I still would have, changed my life and been divorced and found the love of my life. And that's been great. And I'm grateful that, for second chances and God doing the right thing with the right person. I would probably have gone easier on myself. I think what all dads say, one of the things I'm the most proudest of is blending a family of 5. When I met my wife, she had 2 little kids. I had 2 little kids, and we had one together. So we became the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing is, again, managing all that, managing your career, managing your job, managing your education, and raising these young human beings. And so for me, that we were able to do that together is success. I was pretty tough, on the first few kids. And then every dad says, I kind of get a little bit easier, more compassionate or understanding. That's what wisdom is.
Yeah.
I mean, now I don't get worked up near as much as I used to on anything. Like, we owe what? $2,000 for a back tax? What's that? Okay, pay it. I used to get, when you're 30 and 40, you're on fire, man. That's the most energy you'll ever have, I think. And you're on fire. And you know what? You need to be on fire. I would never go back to school now. But when I was in my 30s, I could do it.
Yep.
And so when you're driven, you need to go with that drive. I think I would have, I don't think my personality would have been who I was, nor would I have been or are a good coach if I didn't have that intensity about me.
Yeah.
And that little chip that I have of pushing people, I think that's good, but I'm more understanding now with people, older adults, because I'm there with you. Regardless of what you do, if you're a biohacker like I am and you want to live a long time and you're doing your supplements, your intermittent fasting, your cold plunging, there'll still be a day that it's over.
Right.
So, I wasn't hard on my body. I wasn't smoking cigarettes. I wasn't doing drugs then. It was really just a lot of cortisol, a lot of stress, running around trying to hold everything together. But I'm really glad I did it because that's one of the greatest success stories I have is the 5 kids that we've raised together.
That's
awesome. Do you think he would be proud of you?
The old guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I think that right there is a great goal for life, right? Like now, people that are my age and your age, I guess, in the big scheme of things, we're relatively close. It's like people, I think, maybe have a misunderstanding that you're really kind of trying to make that child happy. Or proud.
Right.
Like that kid that grew up and was like, I want to do all these things. Like a lot of that regret, I feel like comes back because you disappointed yourself ultimately. Like you didn't become that person that you wanted to be. Right. So, so that's why I asked that,
Yeah.
I tell you what,
absolutely.
Something I think about, him saying that and, what you said. I'm obsessed with my daughter.
Yeah.
She's the greatest thing in the world. And I talk about her all the time. And, you talk about you take it easier on people or yourself or whatever. And
you're in good company with that. Cause me and him are the same. Just, yeah.
It's interesting. Cause right now in my life, I'm so hard on myself. I'm my worst enemy. I'm been going through a lot lately, and I've been talking to therapists, trying to learn just to understand it. That's okay. But how do I chill the hell out on myself. Right. And, if I kind of lose my cool, and I don't lose my cool towards my wife or anything, but if I'm just getting real heated and talking about something, if my daughter notices, I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry, cause I just want her to have the best of me.
Sure.
And I want to lead by the best example and, and I don't want her to feel any kind of negative energy from me or whatever. So I'm really being intentional about working on myself in order to just chill out because that's what I told my therapist. I was like, listen, I know this is necessary. I need to be guns blazing. I need to be everything's intense. Like you said, right now is the time to take on school. People are like, how are you going to manage that? I'm like, because I have to. This is the time. That's all I know. And so, but how do I do so? And how do I handle all this stress in a more graceful way? Because I don't want to give myself a heart attack either.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so.
The burpees won't let that happen.
Yeah, so. No, definitely. that's a huge, I'm not a big cardio fan, but for some reason I love just doing a shit ton of burpees.
You got to have that outlet. And that's one reason I still train hard too. Mm-hmm. I deal with customers. I deal with people not paying their bill. I deal with contract trainers that haven't paid their rent. I've got a big lease, You know, I've got a big commitment financially, and it's easy to go to bed with a lot of cortisol in your heart.
Pressure just like...
It can pound you. You know, my wife and I are trying to sell our house and downsize and become 60-year-old people. And so for me, I mean, I was never a runner either. You know, with a knee and a hip replaced, I was mainly just a strength guy. Yeah. But I brought running in, I brought trail hiking in, rucking. I go to the Red Trail at Percy Warner and just kick myself in the butt. And that is the greatest, I think, high that I can feel is after those workouts. It's euphoric for me.
Without a doubt.
So I give the CrossFitters credit for a couple of things, but one is I don't agree with high intensity all the time. I don't agree with doing athletic moves all the time, but they have a lot of great stuff that they do. And one thing is, their workouts are euphoric. I've done the Murph. I've done some of that stuff. Now, at 62, can I do it every week? No. Yeah. You know, but some guys do. And
doing it, you feel accomplished.
You feel accomplished, and I think it's a cleanse. I think it gets rid of cortisol. It increases your cardiopulmonary system, lowers your blood pressure. There's so many, you know, physiological benefits to it that I've tried to, you know, I do like power bodybuilding because when you're hurt, rotator cuff injuries, I lift, but I do a lot of hypertrophy lifting. Yeah. And I'll do a couple big movements a week, like I'll deadlift or things I can still do. Can't bench anymore because of my shoulder. I want to be able to carry my gun or pull my bow back. So I work around those things with hypertrophy, supersetting, compound setting. And that's how I keep some muscle.
Oh, yeah.
And then the food part. But for me, it's like my wife, I walk with my wife sometimes on the weekend, 5-6 miles. And it's not that I love walking. It's that I love what it does for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I tell people come to me all the time and go, what, you know, if I could, I always hate when people say, if I could just do one thing, because it's like, dude.
Yeah. Wrong question.
It's like saying, if I could just brush my teeth once and keep them clean.
Right.
Just do it.
Yeah. That's a good analogy, actually.
I said, you know, well, I people tell me all the time, like, I'm going to wait and start in January. I said, well, are you going to eat this month or are you going to brush your teeth?
We were just talking about this yesterday. Yesterday.
And this is going to be something for the Patreon content. I talk about, resolutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no resolution.
Yeah, exactly.
You decide how you're going to live your life.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, but I tell people all the time, what will you do consistently?
Yep.
If it's walking,
then
you'll do it consistently week after week, then become a walker. Yeah. If it's, you know, obviously I think you need strength training with aerobic training for sure.
Without doubt.
But I'm talking people that come to me that have never done anything their whole life. They don't have an athletic bone in their body. They're aging. They got kyphosis. They're crumpled over, falling apart, and they're aging quick.
And they could be a decade or two younger than you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and that's what we see.
100%, yeah.
That's what we see. So I just try to get people moving and becoming consistent.
Yep.
You know, with
that's
something.
the key.
It's the key.
Without doubt. So I do got some things to ask you. I mean, damn, there's so many things we could break into. So, I mean, it just means we're going to have a refresher before you know it and break into some, because obviously, you know, being the age that I am and listening to you, you know, I'm working on my business, you know, you've had a family, I'm just started a family. So there's a lot of things I'm very curious about with your mindset. And I'm sure you got crazy stories, man. I mean, I do want to dive into those things, but like I said, there's always going to be another time. You're not too far away, so we'll make it happen
for sure.
What I want to ask, by the way, we'll have an extra segment.
Oh yeah,
on Patreon.
Yeah.
So if you guys aren't a part of that, and you want to catch some more of this once we wrap up, head over to Patreon.
Yep. .com/the
Relentless.
But I do have two important questions. Well, it's one question, but there's two sides to it. So, in both your personal life and your business pursuit, what is your relentless pursuit?
Great question. For me, it's to be a good man. Be a good man, serve all the people that God's put in front of me. That means the trainers I work with, the clients that we train, my 5 children, my wife, you know, be a good man. How do you become a good man? I think it's a choice, you know. I'm relentlessly in the weight room. I'm relentlessly trying to live a long life, obviously. Even though, you know, whether I live to be 70 or 80 or whatever, I just want to be functional every day and I want to celebrate living. So I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. But a lot of times when I pray to God, I'm like, you got to keep me in shape in a life because of the responsibility I have. Yeah. I've created this. A lot of people depend on me. And so for me, it's to be a good man and to do my calling. For a long time, when I opened the 3 gyms, my goal was I'd read the book, The Entrepreneurial Myth and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I decided that I didn't want to train anymore. I decided that the screws got to turn and I've got to be outside the business to really be a true business owner. Yeah. And then I started seeing, wow, these other trainers, a lot of them have clients because of me being there. They're spawning off me going to this guy. They're spawning off me. I can't train them. I'm full. So I'm going to put you over here. And then growing this big network of clients.
Yeah.
And the business just wasn't the same. And also I wasn't the same. I'm super fulfilled. Like a lot of people I know that have professional jobs, they have to go out with other couples on the weekend. They have to socialize. They have to, go and party and do these things to get fulfilled because they don't have anybody to talk to. Yeah. They're crunching numbers or they're doing law. And, my wife and I will socialize some, but we're really happy campers staying home and just chilling, building a fire and watching a movie and being together because I talk like you, nonstop, 5:30 every morning till 1 or 2. And then I'm doing the business side, the admin side on the phone, marketing, dealing with my bookkeeper, paying bills. And then I go home and I'm like, how's your day? This is awesome.
It's really interesting you said that because, we know a lot of people our age that they got to go do all this stuff. And Lydia and I, we make sure to have a date night every week.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
my mom doesn't get as much time, so she'd love she's like, oh, watch Ozzy, that's Saturday over here. And we're like, okay. And we love it for her because she's just obsessed. She'd keep her for days and days and days if she could. But I need my daughter back. But last Friday, we put Ozzy to bed and Lydia and I, we open a bottle of wine. She makes these crazy sandwiches. She's a good cook, but she makes these sandwiches that are the best. And we just made sandwiches and made homemade pazookies. And, we've found a movie or a show. We'll just do that. And sometimes we'll have a fire. I think that's all we need.
That's what it's
those
all
are the
about.
best nights.
It really
it's simple.
is.
And that's when you can look at your life and that when you can really find joy in it, when it's just simple and you're as happy as can be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree, dude.
So listen to that. I'm like, hell yeah, I relate there for sure.
Well, you never hear a guy say, I should have spent more time. I should have not spent as much time with my wife. I should have not spent so much time with my children. They always say, I wish I would have spent more.
Oh, yeah.
And you never, and even Stallone, you watch that segment. You watch Arnold's segment on Netflix. And no one, they all have regrets, and we all do. I think you got to pour time into people. I think I don't have to be at every party. Yeah. I don't have to be invited to everything. I'm okay if you don't invite me.
Yeah, it's fine.
Because I perform all day long. I'm on the stage all day long. And that's why I'm a hunter. I'm an outdoorsman. I love my solitude. A lot of my clients and friends will say, how can you go in the woods for 4 or 5 hours and sit there or walk or not talk to anybody? I said, dude, how can I not?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried it?
Yeah.
That's what got me into hunting a few years ago. I was like, man, something about just getting up at 3:30 and packing myself up. It's cold as shit and getting to the spot, listening to some music on the way, putting a dip in. And then I get there and it's quiet. And I just walk through the woods and I go sit in the stand and I'm just like,
isn't it something,
It's
man?
gotta be
watch the sun
something
come up and it's just
primal it connects to, right?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times when I hunt, it's for that.
yeah, it's just
And-
peace.
Yeah, you're not even really.
And I love fast forwarding. I love talking with you because you're like me when I was in my 30s. I dipped for 50 years.
Yeah.
I really did. I just quit. I know I saw that. I was really very tempted.
Young.
I'm an old country boy, and so I quit 4 or 5 years ago just because my cardiologist said, Jeff, you got to stop.
I want to quit after college.
Well, I quit, and here's what happens to me now. Like this deer season, I was like, I stop at the market. And
I'll
I
take
love
that off of the table.
Well, dude,
for
I
you.
love when the sun comes up and it's cold and you can see your breath and you put that hammer dip in.
Yeah.
And you're like, does life get any better than this?
And there's something about
When you
it,
find
dude,
the
it's
right
beautiful.
spot for a dip, it's just amazing.
It's perfect.
It is.
And so that was the hardest thing I ever got over. And we can talk about that in another show. But what I did this year is when I got tempted, I'd buy a can of the Zen, which is it's
I know.
basically
Yep.
like
a
powder.
nicotine pouch.
And I'll put one of those in. It makes me so damn sick that I just spit it out and I said, I'm done.
Nice.
Do the real stuff.
Nice.
I mean, if you're going to, right?
I'm going to.
Yeah.
I just can't do it anymore. So
Well,
I told one of my friends about this recently. I actually tried an alternative that seemed to have very good reviews and had all the right spot, people that were the face of it and stuff like country guys and all this. I was like, all right, nice. So I'm reading the reviews and everybody's like, it's great, feels just like it, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. And I bought it, dude, and it was the nastiest thing. I don't know what it is that's so hard about fake dip that's so difficult to do. It is so bad. It smelled like ammonia.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it was horrible.
it's like picking up yard clippings and putting in your mouth.
Dude, it's terrible.
No.
This is
Terrible.
This is not tobacco.
Yeah. But,
Yeah, no, I've tried some cans and I'm like, I'll just go back and get my Copenhagen.
Yeah.
But
You guys are really tempting me, man.
We're the worst right
don't
now.
let us guys. Yeah. No, but and I do want to take what you said, and you just want to be a good man, and everything that embodied that is be a man of honor, you know, and that's to me, like I tell people all the time, like when before I met my wife, I was trying to build something that was great and something impactful, right? But I couldn't do so if I wasn't living honorably, like, because I want to live by the words I put out. And that's why I took the leap that I did coming into here. But like when I met Lydia, she just ignited that in me. I was like, I want to be an honorable man. And through the journey, you know, I've lost people out of my life, but they weren't on that same track that I was. And but because of that, like it goes back to you saying it's a choice. You have to choose to live that way and be that kind of individual.
Yeah, you do.
And it's not easy, man. You got to step away from all things. You got to miss out on the parties and stuff, but the payback for it is so much better. And you just feel so much higher of a purpose by making that decision.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I really do. I get up in the morning and I don't regret.
Yeah.
And regret, I've had to live with regret. And
same.
And I think what makes a good man is a broken man. You know, at some point we got to be broken down.
Yeah.
That's how it works. It's like, it's the same thing in athletics. You got to buffet your body. You got to discipline it. You got to make it your slave to be good.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's not that I'm better than anybody else. I'm not. I'm a broken man, but I know my weakness and I try to do the things that make me good.
Of course.
You know,
I love it. Well, Jeff, I think this is a good place to close.
Yes,
I just want to say thank you for being on
dude,
here.
Man, it's an honor, man. I'm so glad I got to meet you, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, likewise. And, you know, we can't wait to have you back. And obviously, we're going to connect more. I'm going to have to come train at your gym one of these days, you know, whenever I can get
We
away.
don't have strong guys like you.
I'm not trying to make a scene or anything. You know?
There we go.
I'll put you over there, Nick.
Just leave them alone. Let them do their thing.
But no, but thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. I'm so glad Nick suggested you. And until next time, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
See you guys
you.
next time.
Appreciate you guys.